Hello, good evening, namaskaram. My name is Surabhi Shastry, and this is Book Brahma's Meet the Author. Like every month,
we get to speak to some fantastic writers, some wonderful personalities join us here. Just like that, we have another person who has joined us here today, presenting Miss Nandita Bose. Miss Nandita, welcome to Book Brahma. Thank you for making time and coming here. I must tell you all, Miss Nandita Bose is a PhD in aesthetics from IIT Mumbai. Wow. Should we address you as Dr. Nandita Bose actually?
I only like using the term doctor when I'm talking about my subject specialty. You know, when I'm talking about books which are not my subject specialty, then
It is actually a subject specialty for you, but it's just that you have not done PhD in it.
yes, true.
So, welcome. Thank you for coming. Ms. Nandita Bose has also learned and taught literature for many, many years, and we will be talking about this and more. Usually what I do is I jump straight in and then start shooting questions and we get into the book and the understanding of book with other writers, authors in the past. But today, I want to pivot a little bit. I want you to start with reading or picking one of your favorite excerpts from the book, and we will take it from there. While she preps, I want to tell you all that Book Brahma is a digital platform for everything related to literature. You can turn into our social channels and social platforms to know more about what Book Brahma does. I think we have Ms. Nandita Bose ready.
So before I begin, thank you so much for joining us. I have a special place in my heart for people who read and people who work around books and people who discuss books. And if you're giving up a Friday evening at 5 to 6 to hear me, you're my favorite person. A little background to what I'm going to read. This is a novel in which I have inserted a short story within the novel. And what I'm reading now is a short story that my protagonist is called Preeta, and she has published this in a newspaper, but it does say a lot within the storyline. Yeah? Maiti turned to Suprita, a little foxed. What is she saying? Who is beating her? Her husband, sir. What does she expect us to do? It's clearly a family dispute. What can the police do? He turned to her now, his voice crackling with annoyance. Don't you even understand the basics? The law cannot come into what happens in a marriage between a man and his wife. She took a belligerent stance now. If the same had happened to this Didi here, would you have said the same? No, you wouldn't. Oi, leave Didi out of your filthy speculations. There is a difference between decent households and the likes of you. Something in Supriti's expression gave her a hope. You understand, don't you? Won't you help me? You have the option yourself. Leave him and go, Maiti suggested. 4 kids and I'm pregnant with a 5th. Where can I go with my children? Where can I go that my children won't starve to death? Maiti's deferred lunch perhaps made him extra tetchy. So what do you expect us to do? You didn't think of us when you were making those 5 babies. What is your name? Supriti asked softly. She found an edge of her rag to wipe her nose in. Kajol, madam. How old are you, Kajol? 23, madam. That was younger than she was, and yet this creature before her looked haunted and decades older. What is your husband's name? Lakhinder Nath. Is he afraid of the police? All poor people are afraid of the police, madam, even when we pay them protection money. Don't cross your limits, woman, Maiti growled. What SI Mighty will do for you then is this. He will ask those two constables you met on your way in to go pick up Lokhinder and bring him here. SI Mighty will have a stern talk with him, warn him that any future violence, and he'll be put in a lockup indefinitely. Thank you.
Something Borrowed, Something Blue, a novel by Nandita Bose. Quite an intriguing title, I must say, and I'm sure all of us want to know a little bit more about it, Nandita, and also about the excerpt that you have just read out for all of us. So why did you pick that? Why did you choose that? And tell us more about your book.
So I'll start with why I called it Something Borrowed, Something Blue. Um, this story, and I keep looking at women and how women are expected to behave and to function within our society. So that's my concern, and all my novels are around this central theme. In this particular one, my question was what would happen if a marriage didn't work out, right? So, one of the things in the Western world is this little thing that brides do, and it's a little thing that guides them on what to wear on their wedding. And the little rhyme goes something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. So they do wear something old along with their new gown, and they do borrow something, and they do, typically it's a handkerchief that's blue, or maybe the earrings are blue, something is blue, right? Why it makes sense to this particular story is something that you'll have to read to understand, because she borrows people and she's blue. I mean, she borrows something and she's blue. So you have to sort of figure it out by the time it's a kind of an inside joke that I have put in. You had asked me another question, and that was, what do I write about? Was that it?
No,
About the book.
I wanted to know why you chose this part of the book to read out.
Right. Thank you so much for reminding me. I chose this part because I felt I did something innovative. I have an entire short story, that encapsulates my concern about women's safety, the domestic violence that women face. And, obviously I've not read that part, but at the end, Supriti, she thinks that, Officer Maiti is wrong. It happens in every household. He's trying to distinguish that this would have happened to you because you're poor, but it doesn't happen in decent households. And she, who's been a victim of that, she sort of, Supriti is a kind of an alias for Preeta, who's my heroine. And the story has been written by Preeta. And she's saying it happens everywhere. It happens in all homes. So, I wanted to, because that actually picks the nerve center of of this particular book, which is why I picked that.
Nandita, talking about writing and narrating stories, right? I have had a chance to look at your other writings as well, the books before this and this one too. It's quite simple, anybody can pick this book and read and understand what you're trying to say. It connects really well the language, the writing language. I'm a literature student myself, and with whatever little bit of writing that I do, I get so influenced with what I have read or what I have been taught. So having taught literature, you having explored literature so much, how do you keep your writing so simple? Doesn't literature influence your writing at all?
Um, I'll come to this. I'll come to the answer in a roundabout way. I actually never thought myself, never saw myself writing. But I did have a firm that was in performance management, and I did cater to one of my best clients, blue chip, whatever you would call it. But at the end of 2 years, I had deep burnout, like deep burnout. And and there was pressure for me to commute to Hyderabad like almost on a weekly basis, if not bi-weekly. And so I kind of then sort of took a break from it, and I wanted to do what next. And that's when I felt that, hey, didn't you always want to be a writer? And I asked myself, what really gives me joy? Which book have I read that really gives me joy? And the answer was Mills and Boone. Whether any woman admits to, I mean, there may be 20% women who've never touched a Mills and Boone, but 80% of us, we learned love, we learned relationships, we learned geography, we learned history, we learned dressing, we learned colors, we learned names of places to, Corfu or Haiti and places like that only through Mills and Boone. So, there is so much abroad. Also, let me tell you a small factoid. Every 4 seconds in the world, somewhere, a Mills and Boone is being sold. And I have tried approaching Indian publishers with this statistic. You do not understand how rich women are if they want something. If they want that diamond necklace, they'll take it. If you give them romances, 2 romances a month that they want, they will take it. And somehow publishing industry has alienated women, does not want women anywhere. Like they cater to old men, and they cater to young people who are still discovering themselves. And they cater to a new class. They cater to people who don't read, which is quite silly, because you should only cater to people who read and who are looking for books. So that's how I came into this, and I decided to write a Mills and Boone. And while I was thinking about how to write, not really a Mills and Boone, but a romance, see, my problem with Mills and Boones are that, what happens abroad in a dating scenario is almost impossible for 90-95% of Indian girls. Where you're going out with this man for the night, and you're sleeping with him, on your second acquaintance, it doesn't happen. You're so guarded, it doesn't happen that way. And, we also know that Indian society is littered with wolves in all forms, right? So it doesn't happen. So it has to be within marriage or an extramarital affair or something like that. It cannot really be the formulaic love stories. So, yeah, so, I chose that. Then my question was, how can I pull away these women who are addicted to watching Saas Bahu serials? Because they are watching the same, it's something that doesn't let your brains grow. But what does a lady, after doing her housework at 7, she's finished with dinner, what does she do for the next 2 hours? And that's when I thought that let's write really simple. See, I have a PhD, and I have a PhD in a really weird subject, which is aesthetics. And so, I feel I don't need to prove to people that I have done it. Like, I have done the intellectual bit, okay? It's over. I don't need to prove to anybody that, look, I can write so well, and look, ma, no bike, no hands. I don't need to tell anybody. And another thing that people make a mistake with in India is that they mistake simplicity for stupidity. It's more difficult to write a simple book at a level, you know, that you are not at, and write it simply and put your heart into it, than it is to try to write an arcane book not so well. But that most people in India don't get. So I feel that in the listing of writers, I'm like, not even considered, because there are all such great writers, people who are doing such great work. But my reason for writing simply is because I want to reach out to women like me who were too busy bringing up children and too busy earning to actually have time to read. And when we did turn to mainstream publishers to give us something to read, they gave us things that did not really speak to us. And that's, roundabout and very, very elaborate. That's my answer to your question.
Um, Actually, I agree with you on most parts, and of course, the aesthetic part and the literature part only you will know better because you have studied it. You have done so much of reading and writing. But thank you for letting us know. But to venture more into this, I want to talk to you about your experience with this book and with this story. So, women are mysterious. This has been said, even now, since centuries. For centuries it is being said that women are mysterious. Your writing and your books are centered around this theme: women, love, romance, the need the want, or whatever, but around women. How has your experience been around this topic outside of this book?
Um, if you hear me talk, you probably know that I'm kind of an out and out extrovert, right? So for me, I don't find anybody a mystery. I find that there are certain two or three keys, and you can unlock almost everybody. And I also unlock people who are kind of extremely introvert, and I know that it's time to leave them alone, and only venture in as far as they let you go. So that I know. Uh, I don't think any person is a mystery if you really care. You know, if you treat somebody with love, even the most anti-social person will open out to you. So it's basically a very guy thing to say, oh, women are mystery, and I don't know what works for her. Just basic honest decency. So I don't really buy this understanding that women are mysterious. If you really want to say it that way, then all of humanity is mysterious. Because if you look at people in your class, people who've studied with you in school, people who've studied with you in college, some of your colleagues, they go and do such stupid things that you wonder what were they thinking when they did that? What mindset could take you to that? So that way, the whole of humanity is mysterious. But I'm, I'm not so concerned about writing about a person per se. I'm writing about how that person functions within the constraints that that particular situation gives her. And maybe this is a good time to say that Preeta, who was barely 20 when somebody fell in love and insisted on marrying her, turns a widow quite soon after. And and then her entire world changes, and nothing in life has prepared her for this, right? So, given those set of circumstances, how would a normal, I mean, I'm assuming I'm giving her those characteristics that people can relate to, and her thoughts, her feelings, her experiences are also something that people can relate to. But I'm more concerned about how does she overcome everything that's been put in her way. So rather than the mystery being with Preeta, the mystery is on why is the surrounding so toxic, and what can an individual do to surmount this toxicity.
I mean, I can only say that you should all go back and pick this book up and read to understand and, actually feel what Nandita is feeling right now for her characters. Talking about the characters, Nandita, in your books, we all see the kind of attachment you have for the characters. I mean, more than the scenarios, more than the environment, it's the characters that blossom and, they, spruce up. So, is it you, or is it the story that makes you do this?
Well, I often ask myself, where do I get my stories from? Um, uh, See, some of them I think I have observed when I was very little. And some of them I actually imagine that somebody came, sat on the edge of my bed, and said, will you write about me? They're almost that live to me. They're almost so whatever. And then I say, what do you want me to write about you? And then say, this was my story. And then I try to, so then I'm just a scribe writing for somebody else. So I don't know which of the two is true. But somewhere inside me, there is this desire to try and talk to. And I don't know whether it's very visible to you, but I also talk about about women who are not very accomplished, women who are not in families that really give them that push. They are not in urban scenarios. Even when they are, see, when we are saying Bangalore, it doesn't mean that everybody in Bangalore is wearing hot pants and walking around. There are lots of girls in Bangalore who are not allowed to leave their homes. You can just go to college and back with your brother or something like that, right? So so I'm looking at the people. They may be in an urban setting, they may be in a rural setting, but they are cowed down by their family rules and their family, the like, see, in my family, I think nobody cares whether you're a widow or not, right? But in this particular family, it was the end of the world. Like, oh my God, my daughter's a widow. Don't come here because there's a marriage happening, that kind of a thing. And this happens. It's not that I made it up because I wanted my story to sound sensational. It happens. This is very in all cultures in India, in some part or the other you will find this, so I write about women who do not have a voice for themselves, and because God made me, loud mouthed and outspoken, I write for the people who do not have a voice.
In fact, that reminds me of something that I read. I read an article just 2 days ago in a state in up north where a widow was cooking for a school, and the teachers and the students' parents protested, and they said they will not eat the food cooked by her. It took an IAS officer to come, sit in between all of those people and, eat that food and say nothing's going to happen to anybody if you do this. So, it still exists. I understand what you're trying to say here.
Yeah, yeah. So I am, see what happens is, and I have, friends from IIT who sort of, one person said, but this is from 20, 30 years ago, right? It doesn't happen now. I says, it happens now. It happens in your family. Just you have to see what happens is, men, they are sitting in the outer room, right? They don't even know who's being pushed away from the kitchen and who's being said eat last. They don't understand that, but we who have all access passes, we understand, like if somebody in a family, if somebody is married out of the community, for example, the rest of the family are like a pack of vultures to that particular poor lady when the men are away, so basically, as Indians, we just need to find something that gives us dominance over somebody, and that, that takes our trip. We are so happy we have somebody we can abuse, and we have to break that cycle. We have to learn to speak to our children, speak to our old aged parents who have no money. We have to learn to speak to everybody that we meet, whether it is somebody who is, an employee of yours, working in a domestic employee. We have to learn to speak person to person, rather than in terms of the talk down thing. We're all dying to talk down to somebody. We just do not know how to talk to somebody as if that person is, of my stature, of my, we do not know a person to person, adult to adult kind of a relationship. And it happens even, there would be certain men also who are, for whatever reason, he lost his job. Oh my God, a son-in-law who lost his job and has no earning, and he's sort of struggling for money. He is treated very badly too. So we have to learn how to get out of these little mindsets.
So, is this going to be the base of your storylines for the future also? Do you want all these, issues and all of these messages to come out? And, is this what you want to convey to people, that, let's look deeper into what the society actually is?
So, I tell everybody I write romances, which I do. I write about a man and a woman meeting, and then I try to describe as far as possible that journey, with the few the connective tissue and the people around in that connective tissue. So that's what I basically do. Now, one of the good things for no big publishing house having picked me up is I do not have an image, I do not have a limitation, and I'm not supposed to only write this. So I write short stories,
And
which
you
are very
also
different.
and you also don't have enough followers on
Oh,
social media channels.
yeah. I mean, I don't even know how. I do have about 5,000, thank God for Twitter, followers on Twitter, because they are, you can communicate with people and all of that. I think I have almost 5,000 on Facebook, but unfortunately, these are all folks I know. But somehow I have not been able to crack Insta. And that's because I do not let followers follow me. Unknown people follow me because I have daughters and their photos crop up. And I don't want some creepy person to, I don't know, to come into Insta. So I'm very careful with my Insta following. Yeah, but to come back to what I was saying is that because I do not have an image and I do not have something to protect, I am completely free to write what I want. So I'm writing short stories. I'm also a poet. Once in a while, I review for papers. I'm a book critic for papers. I also work as an editor who evaluates manuscripts that come to certain publishing houses. So I'm like one layer of their elimination process. So I do a lot of other things, around with my writing. My next novel, I mean, the one that I'm trying very desperately to place somewhere now, is completely different. It is political, and it also talks about many taboo subjects that people don't talk about openly. So it's going to be a real struggle getting that out, and not about a woman, it's not about love, you know. So I'm free because I'm not bound down like I think I read on Twitter, and thanks Twitter again because you're giving me topics. I read somebody say on Twitter that I'm reading the latest Salman Rushdie, and this doesn't read, it reads like Salman Rushdie, but it doesn't read like Salman Rushdie. And I'm saying, hello, if his name is there, it is Salman Rushdie. He doesn't have to be trapped by his own image and write the same story over and over different forms. He is a creative genius. Let him just write what he likes. But you know, people feel that if Nandita Bose is writing this book, it should be about romance. No, 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 no. We are going to write something. If you like our writing, read whatever we write. You know,
Isn't that also a point why publishers take you at all? I mean, how many books go off the shelf? How many books go on the shelf? How many takers are there?
so you know, publishing in India is probably at its most, at the zenith of its of its popularity. Of course, fingers crossed it gets more and I get picked up by all publishers, all of that, you know. It's at a really good point. It's also at a point where people are very scared right now, you know. So it's like mythology bik raha hai. You write you yourself write the most rotten mythology and put it out, it will publish. Your book will be picked up in 3 months by some publisher or the other, because the tale and the markets are that, the rumor in the markets is that, mythology sells. And you write the world's best literary fiction, they'll say, but you are not Salman Rushdie, or you are not Amitav Ghosh, you are not Arundhati Roy, you know. So they will only take certain kinds of, but then you're also making these best writers of, of the country, best writers who are relevant to our culture, to, to again become performing fleas for you. And I'm wishing that as publishing gets, more interesting and the bottom line ceases to matter. I met this gentleman at the Matrubhumi Lit Fest. He sat on stage, and he's a publisher in Tamil Nadu. He lives in Nagarkoil, and he was saying that they take the executive decision of publishing a book first. They do not let the market dictate which book they will take. Once it's a publishing decision, then they bring in the market people. And I said, no big publisher does that. No big, the big publisher will first, the big Indian writing and English publisher will first see, can I sell, how many copies of this book do I think I can sell? And not that they're putting their might behind selling it. I'm sorry, they don't do it. But they are hoping that by, so that's what you're saying, if my Insta followers are 1 million, you can, I've known people who have 50, 60,000 Insta followers, and I've gone for their functions, in Bangalore and all that. Not 4 people have turned up. Right? So the Insta followers also can be bought. Publishers can also go way overboard, thinking that all these Insta followers are going to buy. You can buy Twitter followers, you can buy Facebook followers, you can buy Insta followers. Everybody knows it. You get inboxes about it all the time. So that should not be the criterion. And I was really amazed by this guy, Mr. Sundaram, who said that we don't take a book on, when we are selecting a book, we don't make it an economical or a financial decision. It is purely the merit of the book. I just hope this repeats in the national press as well.
Yes, absolutely true on all those points. Nandita, how and when and why did you move from poetry to stories? Again, is, the hindrance of not publishing poems as books is why you moved to writing stories? And
No, I do have a published book of poems, and it's actually sold out. So I think it was a 2,000 print copy lot, and it's all sold out. And I think I hope, fingers crossed, the second reprint will come out soon. The people who invested in me, and they did a very great job of selling it. The book it's beautiful to look at. It's quite readable. On their part, everything they could do with it. It's got the most gorgeous cover, and and things like that. My problem with poetry is not that is not again an economical issue. It's that in poetry I cannot lie, and in all the stories there is nothing of me. The stories are my, it's my observation. It's something I do as a third person. But in poetry you become naked, and that's quite difficult to do on a daily basis, or even want to do it. Yet, because I'm a born poet, sometimes, just 5 or 6 poems will slip out of me, and then I keep it in a file. And and anyway, no one is publishing poems, so I'm like, okay, let it be. But I do think that by 2024 there should be a second volume of poems at least ready with me. So I do write, but it is because it's easier to write other people's stories, and it's very difficult to write your own. You don't want to go through this whole thing where your pain is out there under a microscope for everybody to see. So that's the difficult part.
Yeah, I think we don't even see much of, books on poems or poetry coming out at all. I think it's the same for most people.
It's again, how shall I put it? Again, a very important financial decision, because poetry doesn't sell, you know. And also in India, we have got very used to having free content. We do not want to pay for our books. We do not want to pay our authors. We do not want to pay our poets. You feel that the person's writing a book and it costs so much. I'll find 5 poems in that magazine, which they will buy at the Raddiwala. But there are also extremely rich, extremely well off people in India, and they don't understand that in the past, poets, thinkers, writers, they depended on the patronage of kings. And we don't have kings, but you can crowdsource our entire earning. You know, just if you buy enough books by Indian authors, I'm not saying only me, just put your money into the Indian publishing system, it changes. A lot of Indian publishing also is alive because they are reprinting good books from abroad. Not good books, I'll say famous books, or books that are notorious, like the Many Shades of Grey, whatever
50.
shades, yeah. you know, so so those kinds of things, I shouldn't be knocking it because it probably is some particular publisher's 1 year's, running costs. But actually, that's what is making them. Publishing Indian authors is a loss-making concern. And there are people who can buy, they can happily buy 2,000 copies of my books and give it to all their friends. And that would make me at least eat for 1 year, but they would not do it. They would rather invest in something else. And if they had to buy a book, they would buy, like, something very Western, something that allies with their sense of sophistication. And they do not understand that, you know, we actually are, like, even in the IT capital of India, how many people's drawing rooms do you think have books? And books by Indian authors. They might have, like, if you go, a guy's done MBA because he has all the right books on, on himself being developed, on his whatever. Not a single Indian author among them. Maybe one or two spiritual guru type of advice, but, not the other stuff. So,
Nandita, I must say this. I really like your tone of sarcasm.
thank you.
All points noted. So, we also have these lit fests, right? There's so many literature festivals that happen across the country. And there are budding authors, there are upcoming authors, there's struggling authors. And we find all kinds of authors at these lit fests. How do you think festivals like these help them? Or how do you think they should be helping them?
To be honest, I do know the people behind the scenes at Bangalore Lit Fest and at Bangalore Poetry Festival. Um, I feel that these are people, as I was saying, that I really love people who read books, who are concerned about books, and these are people who put aside around 4 months of their lives organizing this. And believe me, if you organize even a small party, you know the kind of headache it is, right? And this is on a large scale. They get international authors, they get national level authors, they get, local authors, and they get multilingual authors from all over India. So, in both these fests that I am privy to certain of these things because I at least go as a visitor to all of this all the time. They are doing a brilliant job. They are doing the job that perhaps industry should have done, or perhaps publishing houses should have done. All the Litfests in India, we are very grateful. If you're a Litfest organizer, I love you because I know what you're going through. I know your budgetary constraint. Only, I would say, almost the only channel by which authors are celebrated. We do not get, I mean, of course, a beautiful check um, at the end of the year would be the most wonderful gift. But, barring that, this is the second most wonderful gift you can give an author. Give the author a space to speak, an author a place to know. And I'm just back from Matrubhumi International Fest at Trivandrum. The Matrubhumi group and a writer called Sabin Iqbal, who's the curator, they sort of did this, and it was the most exquisite 4 days that of literature. And we had a Nobel laureate there, we had 2 Booker winners there, where in my life would see, had I been about 20 years younger, I would have then said that if he can write a Booker, I would write now. If he can write a Booker novel or he can write a Nobel Prize, I should at least try now. I'm too old for that. I'm still very, very committed to my women, and their love stories. But at least that exposure to a writer, it's like, it's bigger than going to a writer's workshop where you have to pay, millions of dollars, I mean, thousands of dollars, So I do feel that the Litfest scene in India is absolutely the best gift that could have been given to books, to literature, to writers.
That's wonderful. Because you mentioned your love for, women-centered stories and your books, I'm going to ask you to read another excerpt from the book now. Maybe a piece that you might have enjoyed writing or loved writing, and perhaps we can discuss that piece more.
Right, give me 2 minutes to find that page. Now I know why writers come with stickies, I was like, why are they showing off their stickies? Now I know. So this is actually our protagonist Preeta, and she is with the girl who works in their house called Chandrika. Did I just hear thunder? This is Preeta speaking. Huh? Chandrika went to the kitchen step and looked up at the sky. It's going to rain hard. It's almost pitch black outside. You won't believe it is mid-morning. If it rains, Chandrika, I will bathe in it. She laughed at the absurdity of my statement. No, I'm serious. This hot spell has given me the most itchy summer boils. Rainwater is a cure. Then I'll join you. Her voice told me she only half believed what I said. The waters were freezing, far colder than I'd anticipated, and for a minute my breath caught in that shock thrill. Chandrika giggled beside me, her childlike enjoyment of this seldom experience enhancing mine. The raindrops were steady but gentle, their touch pure, rejuvenating. This was an eclipsed childhood memory, this experience of rain that only its immediacy helps refresh. My arms clasped round my shoulders as I raised my face to this respite. A figure leaning against a pillow on the first floor passage snagged my attention for a minute. That he stood watching me made me self-conscious, dampened my enjoyment of this little moment of freedom. That moment had passed. I stayed in the rain only a little longer, only because I didn't want to disrupt Chandrika's glee too. And then I went swiftly to the first floor bathroom I used to wash the rainwater out and resume my routine. There was a knock on the door. I switched off the tap lest I'd imagined it. There it was, again, your towel. Wet and bedraggled, I had omitted to go to my room and bring the essentials I needed after the bath. I held my hand out and he placed a pile there, the towel and a full set of my clothes. When I thanked him, I got as little response as his past 6 months' stay here had accustomed me to. I hope you found it romantic.
Yes, now you have to explain to us also.
Okay, so I do not want to give away too much of the storyline, but the gentleman who's on the first floor is a member of the family with whom the widow the widow Preeta, has had the nicest interactions of her life. Because, as a young widow, you are completely adrift. Your family doesn't want you. Your dead husband's mother thinks that you have eaten her son. I mean, to quote the mother. So, in that particular situation, um, she just needed somebody. And I want to tell all the men out there, you do not know how powerful you are. You can just make lives, because a lot of people, like in this story itself, this girl, whenever she would tell her mom, can we go out for a movie with my friends, she would say, do it after your marriage. So, it was like, somehow my daughter's virginity has to be intact as long as she lives in my house. Let me get her married off to this guy. And therefore, then the whole world that she has access to is through this man, you know. And many men step up to this duty. Luckily, I'm married to one of them. And many men cannot do this duty, and whether your marriage is good or bad depends on that man, right? So anyway, so this man has been of great help to her. In fact, he has ensured that she does not become you know become disenfranchised, does not have to give up her creature comforts, her money, because of having turned a widow. But of course, people talk and things became very sour because his wife accused them of having an affair and, things like that. And then, of course, he's divorced. And he's interested in marrying her because he feels that that's the only next step that they can take. But she is, she feels that nothing doing. I've gone through this once. I don't want to go through this again. And they live in the same house. So that's the story where he watches, he says nothing, but he's always there and he's always taking care of her. Doesn't it feel nice? Like some man always taking care of
I
you.
know,
Yeah.
and I really don't want to break this, but yes, fiction and a story, and it's all in the book. I mean,
Right.
something
Yeah,
borrowed,
that's why
something
we
blue.
need 2 hours of this to just get away from reality. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So pick your copy and get into this magical world of love and romance that Nandita Bose is trying to narrate to all of us. Nandita, would you ever be an advocate for reading? I mean, in this fast-paced generation where people don't have time to do anything, and how many go out there and pick books? People do reading, but they do on their smart tabs, they do on their phones or wherever. So, are you a fan of an actual book reading?
I am a big fan of the actual book reading, and I must tell you that as soon as they switched on the cameras, I became stiff because I am a generation from before electronic media. Cameras were just brought out on special occasions, and you sort of felt very self conscious. And somewhere that is ingrained in my mind. But children these days, they are so, like, my kids at 5 6, they could unlock my phone, they could do things with it, they wanted to play the games on it. This generation is born with a different set of skill sets. That said, you know I do believe that if you are accessing creativity in any form, in music, in art, in any form, the art could be graphic art, it could be, you could just play games, be a total gamer and just admire the graphics, that the graphics are out of this world in, in the gaming world today. So anything that really is to do with art, with doing something that is not um, basic pedestrian, reading, all of this really becomes then something you can lean back on. And believe me, you feel that, nothing is going to go wrong with your life, but it does. You do have times when you have to reach very deep down into yourself and find something to sustain you. And nothing sustains you like art does. And nothing sustains you like a good book does. If you're reading it on Kindle, good for you. If you're reading it on your phone, there are many types of stories that you get on Wattpads and stuff like that on your phone, good for you. I personally love the smell of the book. I love the feel of the book. I love to lie down and turn the pages. But that's me. I would not impose that on anybody. But I would impose on everybody. You do not know what you're missing if you're not reading books. It's really important for people to read books.
I couldn't agree more on that. The first thing I want to do is go pick up a book. I mean, when I'll read it, no, it will go into the to read list, but, it doesn't go into your cart, it comes into your house.
Right.
So beautifully said, Nandita. With that, we come to an end of another. Yeah. Yeah, another episode of Book Brahmas Meet the Author. But before that, we will take a couple of questions which has come online and which is also going to be coming from people who are here with us watching this show. So, can we pass the mic?
We have a viewer who is watching the show live, Samina Ali. Her question is, having written a book within a book, characters within characters, as an author, what tips can you give us to avoid confusion and mix-ups to the overlapping plots that you create?
Uh, Samina, thank you for the question. I love questions that talk about the craft, that talk about the detailing, because that, is something that we rarely get to speak about. Uh, to be very clear, the book is very simple. There's just a short story in it. So it's not like two stories, two narratives that are intertwining. Just one chapter is a short story. And that is integral to the book because this girl has, she has been very close to my hero, who's called Sagar. She's been very close to him, but she could never open out and tell him that she has been in the worst kind of an abusive marriage before her husband died. That one bit she could not, there was so much shame and guilt around it, and you don't speak badly of the dead, etc., etc. And that truth had to come out. And I thought that the best thing would be if Preeta, who's now living by herself, she has a job, her husband was a police officer, she's got a very lowly clerk, clerical kind of a job in the police department. So she is working there, and she's exploring herself, she's painting, she's writing, and this is a story that comes in the paper. But the moment Sagar reads the story in the paper, he comes to see her because he understands exactly what she had meant. And I wanted to also show that there is so much of an overlap in their emotional life that they can read each other. So that's how I have used this, and I hope this works.
I am Devu Pattar. My, I have two questions to you. One is, first you told that there is an mythology rumors regarding my mythology texts, and another in the next part of your interview, you told that the showcases are filling with the European or Western books. Are they contradictory, and who creates the rumors? And this is the one question.
So actually, truly, the generation that is growing up today, they do not know much about mythology, right? Though they have access to a lot more information because information is more accessible today. People are buying more mythology books. Yeah. My problem is not with mythology selling. My problem, and I love it because I also, my mythology is not as strong as it should be. My problem is if you write a really bad quality mythology book, it will still be picked up because people are not looking at quality. Right? That's my problem. My problem is not that mythology is writing. I'm saying the content of the book should have certain things. See, when we are reading a book, we expect good grammar, we expect a good way of telling the story. the use of the right word in the right place, all of that is not there. But even so, the mythology will sell. A good quality book of another genre will not sell. So there is a rumor in the market.
Is there any conspiracy behind it?
No, 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 no. It's just that it's selling. And see, it's not a conspiracy, but publishers are desperate. So they feel, oh, this is going to sell. And so, so if there is one writer who has sold, and if one writer has sold, say, 2,000 books in the first month, that writer, like all publishers are now, then all agents and publishers are calling them up.
I am asking as a conspiracy. Is there, is it the problem of the
It's
less criticism?
inefficiency.
No,
It's
is
an
there
inefficiency.
less criticism?
No, it is inefficiency on the part of the publishers.
Not
The
only publishers, about the reviewer. There is no point to, there is no no review of books, and no spreading of the information about books. Also, lacking of the reviews also leads to the conspiracy, isn't it?
no, see, to be very honest, neither do mythology come to reviewers, nor do the foreign books.
I am asking about the genuine books, which are not getting the space. Why? Due to the lack of reviews. Is it that is it a conspiracy or the lack of the reviewers or the system?
See, there are many newspapers that are running in India without any reviews. So why will you blame the reviewers? I mean, blame the newspapers.
It has a system. It includes the reviewer, it includes the publication units, it includes the conspiracy of the publishers. Overall system is
See,
against to the genuine text.
conspiracy is a very big word. I don't think it's conspiracy. It's all inefficiency at every level, and we are also now in a situation where we have to just take whatever we are being given. Okay. So, somebody will fill a godown with things, we have to buy from there. That has become our way of consumption. So if a publisher feels that 5,000 copies of this book is guaranteed, why do they want to really look for a good book? They are just happy this is coming in, 2 books a year of this type will come from this author. Let's sell it. So it's inefficiency. It's not a conspiracy. They are just quite happy to lie back and let things happen and also get profits. The other book requires, working with the author, requires, bringing it up to a marketable shape, which they are not interested in. And the Western books, we are all, whether we like to accept it or not, we are still slaves.
My question is, filling the Western books in the showcases is not a contradictory with the buying the mythological texts.
I don't think the same people are doing it, to be very honest. Mythology is going into the young adult category. And the buying books by white writers are mostly, 30 plus. Yeah, elite and 30 plus. And, particularly people who are living in cities. And so mythology actually is going more to younger readers. That's what I believe. Or a certain amount of curious younger.
Actually, they are the user of the gadgets. Why they are going to the mythological books?
Because they are interested in those stories and they want them all in one place. That's one of the reasons why mythology is working. I'll give you one example. Somebody called me and said, Madam, mythology बहुत चल रहा है market में. आप एक कालिका माता का किताब लिख दो. And I didn't even know what Kalika Mata is. I said, what is Kalika Mata? I said, मैं थोड़ा research करके आपसे बोलती हूँ. And obviously, I'm not going to write mythology because somebody asked me, but I had to be polite to the publisher, right? He was a small publisher. And the Kalika Mata is actually, Jai Kali Kalkatta wali. That's what it's called in the north, which I found. I lived in the north, but I didn't know. Because we always go to Ma Kali temples types, right? So I said, oh my God, I know so much about Kalika, So I could write the book. They do not care. My problem is they do not care what you write, who you write, who is the one writing. They don't care about anything. They just want a name coming out, Kalika Mata. And the book will sell. Somewhere people have that, they feel that it's about gods, it's, they feel safe to buy that. It's a good, and this again is a lower middle class, book buying crowd who would go towards mythology, in my opinion. But my issue is not mythology per se. I'm saying it was an example of how there is this herd mentality. So, so the market is driving the publishing industry, and the publishing industry is not, in control of the market, is how it is.
One more question I have.
Yeah.
Uh, Between prose and poetry, is poetry necessary to be the autobiographical or self-expression?
Not necessary. I think there are people who have written, drama in verse. They have written epics in verse, which are nothing about. I mean, if you look at Rama and Mahabharata, both of them have, according to me, they have had multiple versions, multiple poets, before it was written down, it existed. After it was written down, it's been translated into many languages. So it's not necessary. But the way I write, see, I could write an autobiography, which would be more autobiographical than my poetry. But in my poetry, a lot of me comes out. It's probably my birth defect. But in my poetry, a lot of my personal feelings, thoughts come out, which I'm still not really ready to share. Or it makes me uncomfortable that somebody knows so much about me. Like this particular book of mine on poems, I didn't realize that I'm constantly talking about the rains. And somebody who read the book got back to me and said, this is so much about rains, this is so much about rains. And I was like, oh my God. And then they said, it is, water is sex and all of that. I said, no, I'm too old, so please. But, people take those interpretations. So I feel, nahi baba, I'd rather write about other people having sex than people accusing me of, So they said, oh, there is something very sensuous about rains and stuff like that. I said, see, these are also memories that we have. We were all in homes where we could open the door out and run out and, be in the rains. Those are gone. Those days are gone now for us. So maybe it's harking back to that, but you don't know what the other person is getting, right? So it's much easier to be in control of your text and write out a story, because the story follows this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. It's more descriptive. It's a different experience. But if you ask me, what do I prefer? I prefer writing poetry. I always feel that, it's coming out from deep within me. Yeah.
And it's more true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was Mr. Devu Pattar, editor of Book Brahma, a journalist, a noted, celebrated journalist himself, who got very, very candid with our guest today, Miss Nandita Bose. Thank you for making this evening happen, and thank you for coming here and watching this show. Thank you all for watching this live on our social channels also. The recording will remain on our platforms. Please come back and watch this beautiful episode we had with Miss Nandita Bose. Before we sign off, Nandita, the launch, we have spoken so much about the characters, the story, the book. So the launch is happening next week, right? Why don't you, tell us all about it? You all to go to the launch, meet with Miss Nandita Bose. She's fun, she's fantastic, she's full of life, and also pick up your book and read more on Something Borrowed, Something Blue. This is Surabhi Shastry signing off from Book Brahma. Meet the author. See you all again next month.